My name is Lisa Courtney, and I am your host for the Elephant Method podcast. Now, today's episode is why I chose the market over the masters. And in this episode, you'll learn why I decided to be a non-native English communication coach. And, it wasn't my decision to teach. It was actually that I found love. Or maybe lust. I fell in love with a man I believed was Spanish at the time, but later learned he was a Moroccan living in Spain, and I really lost myself in the process. Before 2016, I have never lived outside the US as an adult. Growing up in Oregon, my world felt relatively small because being from the Midwest, we really only had two cultures. One was Mexican and one was American. And I didn't yet understand the full constellation of nationalities, identities, or inner worlds that exist beyond the US border. Then on December 22nd, 2016, everything changed. I was traveling through Spain during a short break from school in England. 3 weeks in total. I went to Spain, Italy, and Israel. I was only in Spain for 10 days, but those 10 days altered the trajectory of my life. At the time, I was studying in England because it made sense. England was familiar. It was structured, predictable, orderly. The system was easy for me to understand and assimilate to. It felt in many ways like America, with just a different accent. Even the weather. It was very rainy in London, just like Oregon. The food, though, not my favorite. And while the people were polite, they were distant, reserved, and even on the tube, their subway, you didn't talk. It was silence. But you stood apart, you kept to yourself. And, I really knew how to be competent. I knew how to function. I knew how to disappear in the correctness of the crowd. But in Spain, my world blew up. It was totally different. Spain was loud. It was warm. People were close. You kissed perfect strangers on the lips every time you met. Oh, and then there was the metro, which was like the total opposite of the tube. On the metro, people talked over each other, one after the other. It got louder and louder and louder. And I couldn't imagine that this type of difference actually existed in the world. But there was a physical closeness, a warmth that I'd not felt in America or in England. And it was just a visceral feeling that I didn't observe any other place. But I felt it there. And then there was him. I met him at an open-air market where he had worked for years. He invited me into a stall and encouraged me to sit down. I was communicating in my broken Spanish, probably hovering around at A2 level, doing my best to be present and translate every word in my head. He was tall, with dark brown eyes and wavy jet black hair. His smile, it was as big as the Grand Canyon, and you could feel his radiance from across the room. There was something unmistakable about him, a confidence, a warmth, a groundedness that really pulled me towards him. However, at one point, a customer approached and started asking questions. The conversation took longer than I expected, and I felt uncomfortable. So I got up and started to leave. But before I knew it, he had gently placed his hand on my abdomen, and even through my thick winter coat, I felt the deliberate pressure of his hand. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't frightening. It was intentional. He wanted me to stay. He looked at me and said softly, "Un momento." Oh, okay. And I sat back down, and I waited. After the customer left, he turned his attention back to me and asked me for my phone number. Ooh, I'd only been in Spain for 2 days, and I was excited. In that moment, my mind began to scramble actively for the numbers in my head. Uno, dos, tres. And I finally found him. I wasn't flirting. I wasn't being coy. I was trying to translate in real time. I wished him a buen dia and walked away, not knowing if I would ever hear from him again. But to my surprise, later that evening, the phone rang, and it was him. I remember trying to hold my elation in and focusing on every single word he said so I could respond correctly. I wasn't just listening, though. I was calculating. I was repeating his words back to me inside my head. afraid I would make a mistake. And so I asked him carefully and bravely, ¿Tú quieres un cito conmigo? You want to date with me? Sí, sí, he replied. Okay. I was so proud of myself for asking the question. I said, ¿A qué hora? At what time? He said, a las 9. And I started counting in my head again. And it was like, okay, at 9. Okay, vale. And I had a date. At that moment, I realized something that would take years to fully understand. Language isn't just about words. It's about power. It's about identity. It's about desire and who you become when you're not fully fluent yet. Soon after, I faced a choice. I could stay in England in a system that I understood, in a culture that felt safe, and in a language that didn't require me to change. Or I could choose Spain, a place that asked more of me, linguistically, emotionally, humanly. But Spain didn't just challenge my language, it challenged my identity. It required me to present imperfect, exposed, and yes, there was him. But it wasn't just him. It was the way that Spain made me feel alive. I chose the market. And for the next 3 years, I lived in Spain. I studied the mechanics of English, yes, but more importantly, I lived the struggle of communication every day. I was teaching my students how to find their voice in English, while I was still finding my own in Spanish. That's where the Elephant Method was born. Not in class, not in a textbook, but in the gap between language education and what humans actually experience with their hearts, identities, and futures on the line. This podcast exists for millions, well, in all actuality, over 1 billion non-native speakers in the world who live inside this tension every day. I see you, I understand you, and that's because I have lived your experience. And when you're ready, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. Because in the Elephant Method, we won't just listen with our ears, we'll listen with our hearts. We'll correct with respect, and we'll give you the tools that you need to make your life easier and be able to build the life of your dreams. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm happy to have you as my audience and send blessings your way. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.